Hi, I'm Jacob, and welcome to Finance Fridays, proudly sponsored by the Loanworx Group. Today, we welcome Christine Williams from Smarter Property Investing, here to talk to us about bricks and mortar. So Christine, why should one invest in property?
Well, I believe property is the bricks and mortar, and I think it's a part of the great Australian dream, and we have a history of property increasing in value over time.
So what type of properties are good investments?
That's a very good question, Jacob. Many properties are good investments, but there are properties out there that are bad investments. So may I say the bad investments? I'm very much comfortable with residential property. I'm also comfortable with commercial property. But over both of those scales, there's good and bad in both of those areas. For example, student accommodation is amazing in cash flow. However, from a wealth creation perspective, it may not be right for someone to put in their portfolio. But someone needs to put their head somewhere. So if the person has the 30 or 40% deposit to go into a high cash flow residential property of student accommodation, it's okay. But for a first time investor, I actually don't agree with it. It's not going to suit them and their wealth creation. In commercial, of course, it's really great because commercial, the tenant actually pays for all of the outgoings, which is the opposite to residential property. So once again, getting the right commercial mix in your property portfolio would be a way to go as well.
Can you tell us about the fees associated in buying the property?
Yes, of course. So depending on what state you live in, or we live in Australia, so there's stamp duty according to purchasing a property, and those fees are different in each state and or territory. And there are different reasons for having different types of stamp duty in different states and different territories. For example, you may purchase a property in Victoria and it may be land and then eventually going to build something, and you would pay stamp duty on the land component once the land is registered and settled. However, in the territories, you pay stamp duty on the construction, whether or not it's finished 12 months after you actually sign the contracts. So one needs to be very aware of stamp duty and the liabilities, government fees and charges. Stamp duty, of course, is one of them. And then, of course, you have bank fees and charges. You need to be aware of those. The next lot of fees that I would assume would be your legal representative's fees. So your legal representative could be a conveyancer or it could be a solicitor. And once again, do find out from them what their fees, service and charges are going to incorporate, and make sure that you have that money before settlement.
So do you provide a buying timeline guide?
Yes, once again, Jacob, a very good question. We do. When someone comes into purchasing a property, there are so many elements that they need to take into consideration. And with that, we've provided a buying timeline guide. If you're purchasing an apartment, for example, it's generally 10% down and then balance on completion, and nothing really happens in between except for construction. But one needs to be aware of what's going to happen and when they need to start preparing for the next step of completing their finance, making sure that they've got a property manager in place, insurances in place and so forth. So that's pretty easy, 10% down balance on completion. However, if you're buying land and building a property, there are construction loan repayments and construction loan stages that are involved. So the client is best to understand when they come into play and what needs to be done and who's responsible for transferring this money and being in place. But I suppose the biggest support that we give our clients is we say pre-purchase before they recommend a property. We give them pre-purchase strategies, and then even after the building has completed, we give them post-completion strategies as well. And it's always very good to, be in contact at settlement, and then 3 months, 6 months and 12 months, because you should always be on top of what your property portfolio is worth, whether or not it's going up in value, whether or not it's stagnated, or whether or not it's actually retracted, and that can help you with your strategies moving forward. So a buying timeline is very much what we offer.
Definitely. So how do you get paid?
Very good question once again. I do charge fee for service, so I actually have what's called a discovery session, and in a discovery session it takes about 90 minutes, and if after 90 minutes and that discovery session that the client does not feel that they've received $97 worth of value, we just say thank you very much, it was nice meeting you, and walk away. If they do, I take their credit card details. The next part of my process is if they choose then to engage me as their property strategist advisor. And that fee's $1,500 plus GST, so $1,650. Once again, once you become an investment property owner, the fees that I charge are claimable under education, so they're my fees. Of course, on top of that, being a real estate agent, I'm no different to Barry Plan or a Ray White of the world, and there's a percentage of the purchase price after that. Once again, apart from that, those fees aren't paid from the client. It's really the $97 and the $1,650 that's paid by the client.
What's your advice for first homeowners looking to buy a property?
Get into the market. The first thing a first home owner should understand that they may want to choose to live where they want to live, but in today's economic climate, they may not be able to afford to live where they want to live. So one of the strategies I've actually come up with my clients is actually called rent vesting. Now, rent vesting is simply that. You actually purchase a property where you can afford to invest, but you actually live where you want to live, as in renting. So if we have the typical, mum and dad, we've got our adult children and they're about to purchase their own property, mum and dad like them to be living close to them, but in actual fact, they may not be able to afford to. So we get them to invest in areas that they can afford to invest in, and then along the way, as the property goes up in value, they're technically saving a higher deposit to eventually be able to purchase in the areas that they want to purchase in. So the point is, get into the market, whether or not be where you want to live there or not. It's about getting into the market because property naturally and historically goes up in value if you make sure you buy the right property in the right place at the right time.
Lastly, why you?
Why me? Well, it's a really good question. Here I am, yes, mother, grandmother, wife, of course, and I've been investing for decades. And along that journey, I've made mistakes. But with those mistakes, the mistakes have eventually turned into successes because of the lessons that I've actually learned. So I now teach those lessons to my potential clients so that they don't make the mistakes that I've made. But I do have a very strong 3-step strategy, and in that 3-step strategy, they're not negotiable in saying that you must have a cash buffer. We've got to have something behind us if something goes wrong, because Jacob, something will go wrong along the way, okay? So we don't want that mistake or that something to go wrong to turn into a mountain. We keep it at a bump in the road. The second strategy or not negotiable that I have is it's got to be a buy and hold. We're in this for the long term because it takes a while for property to do what it needs to do, and property has a cycle of booming or busting, and we need to hold it in that time frame. And most likely in Australia, it's generally a 10, 12 or 15 year buy and hold. And thirdly, the not negotiable is understand that this is an investment, this is a business, so we need to prepare and have all the right insurances in place for, landlord insurance. Because I've got to tell you, I didn't have landlord insurance with one of my properties, and $5,000 for new carpet was a lot more expensive than $400 for landlord insurance. So making sure that we have all the appropriate landlord insurances or appropriate insurances in place is exactly a not negotiable as well. So that's why me, been there, done that, and I'm happy to teach clients to build a property portfolio, knowing that it's a minimum of a 3-property strategy. And the reason why I say it's a 3-property strategy is that unfortunately in today's climate, if we have assets over and above our own home over $286,000, we don't, and we're not entitled to a pension. So 1 property does the government a favour, 2 properties really don't cut it, but 3 properties will get you where you want to go. So it's a 3-property strategy.
So Christine, you're also an author. Can you tell us a little bit more about your latest book?
Oh, thank you, Jacob. So my latest book is Suddenly Single. However, I'm actually married today. So Suddenly Single was when I became a rent vestor. I didn't even realise I was doing that a couple of decades ago. I did become suddenly single. It was my choice. And after property settlement and divorce finalised and so forth, I came out with $15,000. That $15,000 has allowed me to invest, and it's allowed me to have a multi-million-dollar property portfolio today. But in that journey, I actually learnt the lessons, or made the mistakes and learnt the lessons. And so Suddenly Single is out there for what I call single parents that really don't know what to do. And I've shared my journey plus the strategies of what I teach my clients today about how to invest in property, and that I've achieved my multi-million-dollar property portfolio as well. The book is Suddenly Single, but it is actually, anybody could actually read it. And I can't tell you the amount of great reviews I'm getting back from it. It's very easy to read, and Money and You, different organisations, ABC and 3AW, they've actually had me on and interviewed me with the book and talked about the strategies that we've had in it. So yes, I'm very humbled to say that I'm now an author, and it's actually the 3rd book, but it's more about strategies about investing in property. So thank you for asking.
That's a wrap for today's Finance Fridays, proudly sponsored by the Loanworx Group. Make it happen.